All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Rogin. I'm a voice actor casting director and one of the 6 admins at the PGM VO List, and I will be your moderator for today's panel. Welcome to the PGM VO List's Being a SWANA Voice Actor panel. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the lands that we are all zooming in from today. Before we can even begin to discuss PGM matters and fights for proper respect and representation and work opportunity, we have to recognize our own positionality, which may include our status as settlers, depending on where we are tuning in from. I myself, being located in Vancouver, Canada, am an uninvited guest on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. I encourage our PGM VO List community and all our partners throughout the VO industry to reflect on the effects of residential schools and colonialism on Indigenous families and communities and engage in reconciliation meaningfully. So I'd like to introduce our 4 lovely panelists for today. And as I introduce each actor, they're going to turn on their camera and join me on the non-existent virtual stage in a mild attempt to make a dramatic entrance, since we're all actors and we love to make things more dramatic than they need to be. So I would like to welcome, first and foremost, Christina Costello, a disabled mixed Lebanese voice actor who is passionately vocal about the need for proper representation. Some of her notable roles include Kalei in the video game Genshin Impact, Alma in the anime Spirit Chronicles, and WA200 in Girls Frontline. If that's how you say the character name. She has worked in various video games, animes, and animations from her home studio and hopes to create a more accessible industry. So hello, Christina.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. All right, next we have Ryan Shrime, an actor, writer, and producer. He has a degree in economics from Harvard University and has made numerous appearances in film and television. In addition to his producing work for films, commercials, and music videos, Ryan produced the Arab American Comedy Festival in New York and co-founded, produced, and co-wrote the Middle Eastern Comedy Festival in LA. His screenplay, Please Don't Die, Roger Berman, recently placed in the quarterfinals of the Academy's Nicole Fellowship and has won numerous awards. As a voice actor, his animation and video game credits include NDA, NDA, and NDA. We look forward to hearing about those when the NDAs are over. Hello, Ryan.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Next, we have Monia Ayachi, a Belgian-Tunisian actress, director, and producer. Monia has studied opera and drama and can speak 6 languages. Wow. Her acting credits include some major video games that she can't name just yet, and some reoccurring roles on General Hospital, Days of Our Lives, Walking Dead, and so much more. A few of her producing credits include Beachbody, E! News France, and E! News International, and some of her directing credits include Unit 42 on Netflix, Full Metal Alchemist, The Revenge of Scar, Full Metal Alchemist Final Transmutation, and today is actually the release of the final 3rd live-action film of Full Metal Alchemist that Monia directed the English dub for. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
Okay. And last but not least, we have Ryan Colt Levy, a New York-born, LA-based actor and musician, most known for his roles as Rhodey Soul from My Hero Academia, Squallow in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, John Watson in Moriarty the Patriot, and most recently announced as Denji in Chainsaw Man. You can also hear him in multiple video games like Fire Emblem, Shin Megami Tensei 5, Gunvolt 3, and Final Fantasy VII Remake. Yay! Hello,
hi guys. Thank you so much for having me. Oh my gosh.
Thank you for joining us, all 4 of you. I'm so excited. This is wonderful. So as everyone can tell from the title of the panel, we are going to discuss what it's like being a SWANA, so a Southwest Asian and North African voice actor. We'll touch on current trends in the industry, the issues, the wins, the changes, and our hopes for the future. So a little rundown of how things are going to go today. I've got some questions for you guys, and then we have our Q&A chat section open. So audience members, please feel free to throw in any questions you have for our panelists in there. And then just throughout the event, I'll ask them as they come in. And please remember that as we're discussing these topics, it's each from everyone's personal experiences, and experiences differ, and so do opinions. And today is about listening and learning. So please keep comments and chats mindful and respectful. All right, so now that the housekeeping stuff is out of the way, I'll finally stop talking and we'll begin so we can hear from the people we're here to hear from. All right, so starting with our first question, just to get things going, can you guys tell us how you guys each got into voiceover? Oh,
Who should go first?
I feel like you started.
I didn't want to be rude and just be like, well, someone, first off, Rogin, you are so eloquent. Oh my gosh. Yeah, like everything just wonderful, just amazing. Thank you for being such a phenomenal host already. How did I get started? I will make this super quick because it's a ridiculously long roundabout story. I've always been obsessed with acting. I wanted to be a filmmaker and an actor as a kid before anything, because my parents, they just saw that I was kind of always in my head, kind of obsessed with stories, and they were obsessed with movies, and watching movies was kind of like just an act of love in our family. Like, we just did it together all the time. So filmmaking to me was like, oh, this just feels like a natural thing to focus on. I was so obsessed with it. And I tried pursuing it as a kid to little degrees, but not fully understanding. And this was in the 90s, not understanding how to enter the field at all. The internet didn't exist yet, or in the way that, it does now. And my parents weren't in the industry, so there was no real like, oh, here's the A to the B to the C kind of thing. And when I was so I did a lot of like school plays and things like that, and I made things with friends, and we would make short films. And by the time I was 12, I discovered guitar, and I became obsessed with just the idea that I could create something instead of hoping to create something. I could go, oh, if I have an idea, I can play it and figure it out. I can make friends play instruments. We could start a band. So music kind of became this thing that I could run with and be creative with. And after years and years and years, almost like 20 years of being in bands, touring and recording and doing all this stuff, we moved from New York to LA in 2015. And I was like, you know what, we're in the city for acting. Why don't I just, here I can, at this point, the internet it's doing its thing. I can go on the different casting websites. I can get headshots. I can start, taking classes again. So I was, doing scene study and improv classes and just falling in love with the craft of acting. And I was doing extra work. I was just like, anything that I could get for a gig, commercials, background stuff, didn't matter. I just wanted to be on set, learn. Any paycheck doing that was better than like the other 2 jobs a day that I was doing to survive. And I ended up, actually, the first voiceover job I booked was off Actors Access, and then ended up being like a motion capture, facial cap, like a whole elaborate thing. And even though the project never actually came to fruition, it was this amazing experience. I got paid really well. And the freedom that I felt in that space, I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And I ended up shooting a short film, an on-camera short film with some people in my acting class. Someone had approached me and was like, would you like to, be in this? And that was directed by a really phenomenal voiceover actor named David Sobolov, who instantly became like a brother to me. And by the time we finished shooting this thing, he was like, do you do voiceover? And I said, I don't have a reel yet. I want to pursue it, but I want to do it right. And I don't want to just like throw myself into the wind. So he helped produce my reel. And then I basically took that, and then I took my measly on camera credits and all the information I could like squabble together into a little resume that was like, literally like, this much of a page. And I living where I live in LA, I'm near a lot of the dubbing studios and recording studios. So I kind of just figured, what's the worst case is if I reach out to them, I look up the different pathways I can email them or whatever that are hopefully not going to get me, ignored or worse, and just see what happens. So I sent out all the stuff, and I wrote them all individual emails, kind of assuming I would not hear from them or whatever. And some within a few weeks, some within a few months, almost everyone more or less immediately got back to me with auditions or putting me on their roster or giving me just a direct opportunity to do like some NPCs in a game. Fanny, who I see is in the chat, actually is one of the first people to really like give me a career. She brought me, and she actually called me. This is I'm going to take this extra time because it's a good story. She called me after I had sent in those initial emails, and we had never met before. And she was a casting director at the studio where they were doing live action dubbing for a bunch of Netflix shows. And this was right as everything was like making the deal with SAG to have all this dubbing go union. And she calls me because the demo that I sent was like a character demo. It was like an animated kind of thing. So she calls and she's like, "Oh, hello, Ian, how are you?" It's so sweet and full of energy. And she's like, "I just want to tell you, the thing you sent, it was great, but it's not what we do here." And I was like, "I'm so sorry that I like did not realize that, like, that's just so, like, I shouldn't have sent you something so out of the blue. That's not what you guys work on." And she's like, "I like your voice. Why don't you come in for an audition?" And I was like, "Huh?" And I went in for an audition, and I got to work on this huge dubbing screen. And that was the first time I just did anything like that in the wild. And that ended up being the first thing I booked. And it was the lead in a show, and that kind of led it off to the races. So Fanny, I love you, and I will always be eternally grateful for you believing in me. And that's my story.
Amazing. Who wants to go next? Come on, guys, just jump in there.
I'll go. It's mine's not quite so exciting. I mean, I've always wanted to be an actor since I saw E.T. as a child. So I was getting into a lot of trouble in school, and my mom was starting to freak out, and so she's like, "I need to put him in some sort of an acting camp." And so she found this thing. I grew up in Dallas. She found this thing in Dallas, and she said, "You're going here," because she knew I wanted to be an actor. And so it ended up being a show choir camp, and not an acting camp. And so I became a singer. My first song I ever sang in my entire life was Bryan Adams's "Everything I Do," but it was an octave lower than he sang it. So it was a really exciting time for all who listened. And ever since then, I like other Ryan or Ryan 1. I did school shows. I did everything I could in Dallas to just perform, and then college, and then I always knew I wanted to get into voice acting because, like, I loved singing and I loved doing stuff with my voice, and I always just enjoyed that aspect, but I never knew how to do it. And then comes my lazy period where I knew how to do it, and I just didn't want to get myself up the courage to do it until finally the pandemic hit, and I was like, I can't act, but I can voice. So I put together a really embarrassing demo of stuff I wrote myself and voiced myself and sent it to my manager. And he happened to work with Atlas, who are my agents now, and he sent it over to them. And thankfully, because I speak Arabic and French, they were like, "We need more of this." And so they took me on and have been sending me out. And I started doing a lot of dubbing. Monia has hired me sometimes, and I'm so grateful. And I've done a few video games and other NDA things, and it's been great. I'm really loving it, and I'm finally starting to get into the whole Twitter and Discord world, which is completely overwhelming. And but yeah, I did my first Twitter audition last night, actually, which was a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm still baby in this, and I'm really enjoying the process.
All right, I go. I'm like looking at Christina. I'm like, do you want to go? Okay, so I've always known I was going to be an actor ever since I was, yay big, to the very sad parents, that I had, because obviously Arab dad's like, don't do that, do anything else but that. But I was like, no, I'm gonna do that. So I've been acting, forever, and then I studied opera, so I also sing, and voiceover specifically. It's kind of funny because back when I was a kid, I would always do everyone's voicemails in my family. Like I would set those up, and they were like, you have such a nice voice. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure. And then, gosh, it must have been 10 years ago. Yeah, maybe even more, maybe like 11 years ago. I went to an audition, an on-camera audition, and I met one of my very best friends to this day, Mukta Sholet. And she was doing some voiceover, and like we started talking and we hit it off right away. And she's like, hey, you're my first language is French, right? She's like, I work for this company and they do these like industrials, and I think it'd be great. So she referred me to them. So I started doing that back then. And then from then on, I got referred to DPN, who's my agent to this day. Like, I will forever grateful to DPN, because like I didn't know what I was doing when they signed me back then. And I know DPN is like the top. So I was like, oh, okay, sure. And so they had me audition, and like it took a little bit for me to book something. But then once I started booking, then I kept booking, and so I'm never gonna leave them. And yeah, and then for the directing, I think that kind of transitioned from, I mean, I still act on camera and voiceover, of course, but then the directing, I started an adaptation, and then I got a project, and then another, and then in this town it's like word of mouth. And I think when you're a good person and you treat people well, then people talk. That's what I always tell people. I'm like, be a nice person, you never know who's who, don't talk bad about other people. And so from that point on, I got referred to this project and this project and this project. And then, I ended up with Fullmetal Alchemist, and then I also directed Duolingo, which was really fun. And Furiota, which Ryan is my lead in, and Ryan, the other Ryan, is also in. So yeah, and then it's the best day job as an actor. Like when people ask, oh, like, do you like voiceover and directing? I'm like, I love it because it's creative. I get to be around my favorite people who are actors, and yeah. So when I'm not shooting, I'm like, send projects my way. It's fantastic, and I always like to keep a fun, as you guys know, like a fun environment, and it's not brain surgery, it's entertainment. So we come in, we have a good time, and then everybody goes home, and then we see the project and like, yeah. So that's kind of how I work. Oh, hi June. Yes, and I love working with you too. Yes, I hired June for my last project, and that was cast by Natalie Avital, who's like my favorite casting director, hands down. She's the best. I don't know if she's here or she's going to be here, but she's awesome. So that's how I discovered Ryan Colt Levy. So
yeah, we love Natalie. We love Natalie in this house.
Oh my God, she's the best. So anyway, so that's me.
Hi, I feel like my story's not that exciting, but okay. So I always wanted to act since I was little. My parents did the whole Arab bomb thing where you could be a doctor, your aunt's a doctor, and I was like, no, no, thank you. I want to be goofy in front of a camera. My parents are pretty supportive. My other aunt, not the doctor aunt, is a stunt double. So we have a little bit of that like crazy actor gene in our family a little bit. So she had always been really supportive. And I did on camera from when I was about 13 to 18, 19. I got very, very, very sick. The lung disease I had really flared up, and it just made working on camera not quite possible, but I wasn't really ready to give up. Started looking into voice acting, didn't do anything about it because I didn't really feel good, and I had a lazy face too, where I didn't want to do anything. And the pandemic hit, and it kind of made me realize, hey, everybody's inside like me, since I had surgery right before the pandemic. I was already inside for 2 months. Then 2020 hit, and it just kind of, I don't know, lit a fire under me. Everything became a little bit more accessible, and I had some really cool opportunities. The first thing I did is super embarrassing how I went about it. I didn't have a demo reel. It was for like a kids. I sound like I'm 12. I'm going to put that out there. You're all thinking it in the chat, and that's okay. I know I do. That's fine. So there was like a nursery rhyme channel looking for somebody, and I didn't have any actual demo reel. I only had princessing clips because I did princess parties for a while. So I cut together all the princess singing that I ever did and sent it to them. And I was like, good enough, maybe. But that ended up being my first voice acting job. And I shouldn't have worked out. Thank you for clapping. I feel like they should have said no because I sent all the wrong stuff, but they didn't. And it just kind of grew from there. And it's been really amazing. I'm really public about my health. My health's not great. But this industry has been really welcoming and really accessible. And I've learned that voice acting is something I can do even if I don't quite feel that well. I mean, totally upfront, I recorded Genshin Impact with a kidney stone. My first session, I auditioned with the same kidney stone. But like, I could. It didn't take it away. I couldn't have gone into studio like that at all. But I was able to get in my pajamas and go in my booth. And I think just having the opportunity to still contribute and be a part of the industry, even when I'm not doing great health-wise, has been amazing. I'm very fortunate. My aunt always says I can stay with her in LA if I have to. I can travel in studio. I will, not with a kidney stone, but otherwise I usually will show up. But it's been really cool to have the option to, like, I don't know, get to decide if I feel okay enough. And I think that the voiceover industry has been an absolute blessing. And sometimes I question how I ended up here because I feel like I don't know. I woke up one day and I was doing voiceover.
Because you belong.
Oh, thank you.
Deserve to be here. Yes.
Now I'm gonna cry on the thing. But thank you. Yeah, this industry is wonderful, and I really can't wait to see it continue, hopefully, to be accessible and to let people in that might not be able to do quite all the traveling because of health issues. And I just feel very lucky to be here. And I'm going to stop rambling because now my eyes are tearing up. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you guys for sharing. It's always really interesting to hear about how people kind of like fell into voiceover. But yeah, before we get into the discussion about like problematic depictions and better representation, for those who might be less familiar what that actually looks like, especially for SWANA people, can you guys name some examples of the common trends we see in the industry in terms of SWANA media depictions?
I mean, I think, you know, the one that we're all very much used to are some sort of predicament where suddenly the character's got a bomb strapped to their chest, or, you know, and it's like, oh no, but you know, there's compassionate reason behind it. Like there's, you know, like there's a story to it, and it's like, okay, so that's the way you're going to frame it. I remember growing up very much around the time, like I was in like middle school, early high school, when 24 was a really big show, and it felt like every week it was just like, who's the new terrorist that sort of kind of looks like me, you know, like, and it was such an odd thing to like to see be so celebrated, you know. I can go on about this for a while, but I think that's my big peeve, and I'll go on about it later as to why. So that's my number one, like, ugh.
I have lots of thoughts. You know, when back in 2003, I think it was, I saw a I saw an ad for the army. It was a just commercial, like join the army kind of a thing. And, you know, it was like you're on a secret mission and you have food for 7 days. It's now day 21. Your mission, surveil the enemy. And the image of the enemy was a dude in a turban with crosshairs on his face. And I'm like, oh, that's how we create an enemy. And so I got involved with this New York Arab American Comedy Festival, started by Dino Bidala and Maysoon Zayed, who started this thing right after 2001. I mean, right after September 11th, because they were like, well, Arabs are in the spotlight right now and it's not good. So let's change this perception. Let's use this spotlight to create something that is going to give us positive footage. So they started this thing, and when I moved to LA in 2008, a buddy of mine, we went to this talk on Arabs in the media, and there's this old documentary called Real Bad Arabs, which is about Arab portrayal within the media. And basically how the Arab was always either the belly dancing, you know, veiled lady, or the fat Arab sheik with a scimitar collecting virgins. And we were like, you know what? I think we've evolved from that point. You know, yeah, 24 is still a thing. You know, I think we've evolved. And then we saw Taken, not to call out that movie, but the final bad guy in Taken is a fat Arab sheik with a scimitar collecting virgins. And we were like, okay, I guess we haven't really evolved at all. So that's when we started, and I know, I guess the term is problematic now, but that's when we started the Middle Eastern Comedy Festival, because we're like, there's still a lot more representation or positive change in representation that we need to make. And, you know, B for effort, the industry is trying, but I do think there's still a long way to go. And we can get into this more later, but I think a lot of that comes with writers and producers, not just as much actors and performers. We'll sure we're going to have plenty of time to talk about that.
Yeah, I think you know, to mirror, I mean, on the female side of things, obviously, for a long time it was the girlfriend of the terrorist, the daughter of the terrorist, the wife of the terrorist, the sister of the terrorist, or she's a terrorist too. You know, I know, surprise. Like, but I feel, and again, I like to look at the, you know, bright side. I feel like that has gotten better. I'm seeing less and less of that. And it's lovely. It's lovely to see. Like, I even had an audition where it's like, I was fighting the terrorists, right? So I'm the girl that's like, no, like, screw you all, stop what you're doing, which is, and she was, you know, she was SWANA. So I think something happened, something shifted, which is really lovely. Again, it's not from 0 to 100, right? It's never an overnight thing, but I do feel like we're going in the right direction. And I think part of that is there's more representation, right? There's more representation with writers, and still very little. Like, you know, we're going from 0 to like 0.1, right? But that's still better than 0. I think the more we see, like you said, Ryan, like directors and producers and writers, you know, from our community being in charge of what's being created, the better the content is gonna become for our community. So I think it's slow, but it's definitely, like, I'm seeing this, not, you know, because for a while it just felt like, oh God, you know. So yeah. I know.
Sorry, can I just chime in again real fast? You know, just you know, Rami and Mo and shows like that, I think,
Yes.
you know, to answer that specific question, we are starting to see, I think the industry recognizes there's an issue, which is huge. They don't quite know, or we don't quite know as an industry yet, how to solve that issue 100%. But the awareness that there's an issue is massive. I think also part of where we're at right now is an Arab character or a SWANA character needs to be justified still, as opposed to, hey, I'm Tim, I'm you know, the cool kid. Hey, I'm Jenny, I'm the cool girl. Hey, I'm Muhammad, I'm the kid who's under the oppressive Muslim parents who needs to find a way to, you know, I mean, like, there still needs to be an explanation as to why we have this Southwest Asian character in our thing, but at least there is inclusion. And it is a huge step, and don't want to be all doom and gloom. We're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and Rami won Best Show was the last year or the year before, so it's that in itself is huge. And yet there's still a lot of people that haven't seen it. They're like, oh, but I'm not Arab. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Like, I'm not white and I watch your show, like, watch it, so, oh, but I don't know if I can identify. I'm like, watch it. It's a terrific show. And one of my closest friends, Leif Mackley, who Ryan Shrime knows as well, is on there, and he's terrific. So yeah, so if you haven't, watch Rami and Mo on Netflix as well. It's also terrific. Again, positive change.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely positive change. I think, gosh, when I first started, I couldn't tell you what I saw for stereotypes because I just didn't see any SWANA auditions at all, ever. I saw nothing the first year. I think I saw 3. And of the 3, maybe one wasn't like a terrorist daughter. The rest were like the 7-year-old daughter of the terrorist who's like, please don't blow up the Americans. They're so nice. Like, not, just like not, I don't know. That stereotype is so overwhelming. And I feel like we are moving in the right direction, which is really cool to see. Something I see a lot, and I don't know if there's like a real term for it. I just call it like close enough. We kind of tried where they like mash a bunch of like ethnic backgrounds in one, and they're like, well, we included SWANA, so you're welcome. There's your rep. They're just also 7 other non-related ethnic backgrounds in this whole world that we created, and you can share it. Like I grew up watching Aladdin. That's the only rep that I could think of as a child that I saw was Aladdin. Looking at Aladdin as an adult, it's a bunch of things mashed up together to create Agrabah. So did I really have rep as a kid? I don't know anymore. I still dress up as Princess Jasmine, though. I can't help it. Sorry. I'm guilty as charged. She's beautiful. I am who I am. But like, it's kind of that kind of thing that I think I still see. But it is a step in the right direction because we are being included, and that's pretty cool. I think from when I first started till now, I do see way more SWANA characters coming to life. I do feel, like you were saying, Ryan, it's always a justification though, like why they're there. I would love to just get to exist. Like right now, all of us just exist. We have our own day-to-day lives. We do regular people stuff. I would love that to be like in a script. Like we're just there because we also live there. That's the whole answer. So that's my hope for the industry. And I think we'll get there. I just think it's about being loud and showing that we should be included. We have something to contribute. We're interesting people. I don't know what I'm getting at, but that's my feelings. So cool. I talked. Thank you.
So yeah, absolutely. We see male aggression, threats to the West. We see gendered females, the oppressed by their male counterparts and in need of saving from the West. And then, as you said, Christina, kind of SWANA being just a big mashup of one thing, and SWANA contains such a vast different people and languages and cultures. So yeah, that's unfortunate, but it's good to hear that there are changes happening. Before we get to those good changes, we'll get there. But I'd like to hear, if any, what are some challenges you guys have personally faced in your careers due to your SWANA identities?
I could definitely kick this off to go back to what I was talking about before, which I think is part of what kind of led me personally on the path that I'm specifically on, with which for me I think is kind of touching on what Christina was talking about, because when I was a kid, I think about, like, I've always been, it's no secret to anyone who knows me or any of the things behind me, I'm a big genre guy. I love science fiction and fantasy and all these wild things. And I mean, Star Wars for me was like such a important like thing of like in my development as a human being. And I remember like it took me a couple of years to realize like in starting with Star Wars and all kinds of media, as much as I wanted to be the Luke Skywalker, I was very aware that people like me didn't end up in movies like and get to do those things. So I always gravitated towards Boba Fett or Darth Vader, people in masks, people who are like fully characterized in a way that you couldn't even tell what they were. And I was like, well, that seems like a place that I can like fit myself, because otherwise I'm not gonna get to do the other thing. And cut to, you know, years later when I moved to LA and I'm pursuing on camera specifically, and there was a director who actually had reached out to my acting teacher at the time and wanted to bring me into audition for a film that they were doing. And he reached out and was basically like, let me take you out to lunch. I want to like talk to you about the story and the script and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, this is cool. Like, I've never had an opportunity like that. Like, you know, the director wanting to do this whole thing. And, you know, like, so I was really honored, and I went out to lunch with him, and he was really sweet. And we talked about stuff and, you know, just films in general. And it was a cool conversation. And he's like, I'll send you the script later tonight and we can, you know, go over it and we can call about it some other time. And so he sends it to me, and I'm going over, you know, the scenes that he sends, and the guy's got a bomb strapped to his chest, and he's in a bank, and he's, you know, trying to get money for his family, and it's all this stuff. And I'm like, instantly my whole body just like sank. And I was like, well, not only is this just disappointing, but like, I'm not even going to entertain the idea of auditioning for this. So I just immediately emailed him and was like, you know, I appreciate you reaching out with, you know, thinking of me to do a thing, but like, this is not what I'm here to do or represent or what I want to do, you know, in any way in entertainment. You know, to me, this is just not helpful towards anyone. And it's just putting this stigma out there further that we really need to change. And it was so strange because I actually got pushback, not necessarily, you know, like, you know, nothing was going to come of it, but there was this sense of like not being willing to challenge, like find a way to make the character likable with the circumstance. And it's like, that's not the issue. You know, the issue is that this doesn't need to be the circumstance anymore. And the fact that this character happens to be this specific ethnicity, and therefore this is where their story has to take them to achieve said goals in any kind of story, just seems so exhausting. So that actually was a huge thing also that kind of led me away from on camera, because I was like, well, the only way, especially being fresh in the industry at that time, I wasn't in a position to get auditions for interesting different characters. I was just lucky to get a job. So I knew that the only jobs that were going to get offered to me were, suddenly they saw me in a box, and it was not the box that I wanted to be in. And I decided that I was just going to kick the box open instead. And I personally since have really kind of been on this personal crusade of like wanting to play characters that aren't necessarily even about what my ethnicity is, but it's more the fact that someone like me can play those characters because we weren't allowed to before. And to me, that is kind of what I want other people now who are coming up to see that they can do as well, because they may love a certain story that maybe is a novel that may one day get turned into a film and this and that, whatever. And maybe this time those producers aren't going to cast the Brad Pitt guy. You know, maybe they're going to cast someone darker. Maybe they're going to cast somebody who's not what people have just expected to be, the cookie cutter traditional hero. And it doesn't have to be necessarily based on their ethnicity in the story, but it can be this thing that shows you that we can play anything. So to me, that's really important. And now I will leave the floor.
Yeah, I mean, very similar stories. You know, interestingly, you know, I think this applies predominantly to on camera, because voiceover is a completely different world as far as you can voice the part, you know, you can voice the part. And I have to say, I am seeing a lot of the voiceover world trying to be cognizant and proactive in hiring characters of specific or actors of specific ethnicities to play characters of those ethnicities. So a lot of these things that we're talking about, I think, are predominantly in the on-camera world. You know, and the thing is that, I mean, I have a lot of similar experiences that to what Ryan was talking about. You know, I was speaking to a casting director a number of years ago about this, early, like 2010 or something, and about just the difficulty. And I was like, all the heroes are white. Heroes are white. Arabs are, we're the other. We are the, we're the mysterious desert people. We're the terrorists. We're the, in the fictitious Star Wars worlds, you know, we're still the, you know, the, one of the new Star Wars, we're the big fly with the big nose who's hawking his wares. You know, even in CGI world, we're othered. And so I was talking to her about this, and she was like, well, part of the reason is you don't count. You're not an ethnicity as far as Southwest Asian. Census-wise, SAG-wise, you know, we didn't count until a few years ago as a box to tick. And so there was a great push for us to at least be a box. It's, you know, it is difficult. And, you know, Ryan, I hear you 100%. You know, I grew up with the Luke Skywalkers, and I always saw myself as that. And then I didn't really see myself, well, growing up in Texas, I did see myself as other, but like, I didn't really comprehend it until I became an actor. And then, you know, I start hearing from all these casting directors, oh my God, we love you. We're just trying to find the right role for you. A year and a half later, I get an audition from them for cab driver number 1 or deli owner number 2 or terrorist number 3, you know, and I'm like, but I can, you know, grew up in Texas. I could be a farmer, you know, like it still is difficult. And again, this goes back to a little bit of what I was saying, until we have the creators, it is still difficult for people to look at people of our complexion and say, you can live a life that doesn't depend on your complexion. You can just be something. And Southwest Asian characters are still the roles that people feel okay being loose with the casting. You know, if you have a film about Cherokee Indians, about Indigenous Americans, you're not going to get some random Spanish dude playing those characters, partly because there's a very powerful lobbying advocacy group for Indigenous Americans. We don't have that. And so, you know, there, even as recently as this year, I'm seeing somewhat high profile Arab roles being cast with, you know, Latino actors or Italian actors. And it's like, there are enough of us. We can do it, you know, and there are enough of us with chops that you don't need to do that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, like you both said, is reflected with on camera for sure, more than in the voiceover world. Like from my perspective, it's funny that you just said like Arabs are being cast by Latinos. You know, I go out a lot for Latina, a lot, because they think I look more Latina than I look Arab. I hear this a lot, and it always shocks people. But oh, you're too pretty to be Arab, and I'm like, Arab women are the most beautiful women in the world. Like, you know, fight me on that. But they are. I was just in Tunisia, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to take Hollywood and like bring them here on a field trip and be like, this is what we look like, you know, because they have this misconception, obviously, because of years and years and years of wrong casting and, you know, not inauthentic casting. And so they don't even know. So they're like, you're not. And I'm like, no, my dad is 100% Tunisian, you know. So, and people are like, well, don't you feel bad going out for Latina roles? And I'm like, I will feel bad the day where Latinas don't go out for SWANA roles anymore. but they do. It's still happening. I need to work, right? I need to feed my family. So it's like, until that shifts, it's going to be a big mishmash, right? So it's unfortunate, but there's this like misrepresentation of what we look like, and then it's like, oh, you don't look Arab enough. What does that even mean? Well, what does an Arab look like? Give me an example. So I think that, to me, with the on camera has been more of a challenge, and like I said, Ryan, like the VO, they're really working hard, and it's really nice to see that shifting. But I mean, there's a long way to go. I forgot to mention two shows actually that are really good about representation. Mrs. Marvel, that just came out. Laith Nackley, again, like he's one of my like dear loves, so I'm always gonna praise him, but he's in that too. And that has a SWANA director, which is amazing. And also our friend Ayman Saman, who created a cartoon called Momo's America. It's on YouTube, and that thing, it's going to take off like a rocket, and it's amazing, and it's funny, and it's all of that. So definitely check it out, because it's amazing. It's, again, more and more, even if it's one, right? We're like, come on. And I think that's what's nice about this community too, is that like we lift each other up, right? We're like, cool, you're doing that, let me promote you, let me make sure that you're seen. Because again, like we're still, like there are Native Americans, and then we're right above them on the representation scale, whether it's on screen, off screen, like next to the screen, like we're just right above, and there are millions of us, right? So it's, we need to keep, I think, like that's our job really as members of this community, to keep lifting each other up and tell people about things that they might, about shows that they might not have heard of, or, and just keep promoting that, because the more eyes we get on this, the better it's going to get. So we got this, guys.
We do got this. Yeah, on camera, I think has a lot of, my on-camera experience was basically being told at like 16, mind you, I was pretty young. Would you consider getting a nose job and dyeing your hair blonde? Or would you consider dyeing your hair black so you look a little bit more what we think an Arab looks like? My red hair is from my Arab grandmother. She's Lebanese, 100%. This is the hair that grows out of her head. That is the hair that grows out of my head. But it was never like, I don't know. I either didn't look Arab enough, or but I definitely wasn't white enough. That was like the big thing. I got signed to an agency in New York when I was 19 and was super excited and was like, oh my gosh, this is my chance on camera. I got in, and they were like, yeah, so you need to straighten your hair, dye it blonde, probably get a nose job. And do you think you could do like fillers so your face is like not so sharp? Like you guys have that sharp face. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is fun. This is how this industry is going to be to me. That's neat. Not cool. And they didn't know what to do with me. I was so desperate that I did get signed, but I just sat for a year because they were like, well, nobody looks like you. We don't know what to do with you. And it was like the most soul crushing, I think, experience for my ego ever. I went through a whole year of being like, okay, so I just look weird. That must be the answer. I'm just weird looking. And it, I don't know, shifted the voiceover. And I think the one issue I have run into with voiceover, and I don't know if this happens to anybody else, I'm assuming someone, at least this must happen to at least one other person, I have gotten reached out to for representation as a SWANA voice actor, but then will be offered no like white roles, or I will only get white roles, not SWANA roles. Like I won't be offered the ethnic mix at all. I get very pigeonholed. And that's the one issue I've run into. It's not always, most people try very hard not to do that, but I have experienced that in the last year where it was kind of like, oh, well, you said you're SWANA. Why would you want to go for like the white girl? Like, because the like white girl's the lead. And I would like to also read for her. What do you mean? I'm like, because I can sound like that? You said she has a high-pitched voice? There's no like European accent. There's nothing that I can't do. Why can't I read for that character too? So that's like the one thing that I think in voiceover, I think pigeonholing, and I think that happens to a lot of different people of other ethnic backgrounds, where people just get this like hyper focus where it's like, okay, you said you were this thing. We no longer will view you for any roles that are Caucasian. And you're like, no, there's a lot more of those roles. I would like to also be sent those auditions too. Please. They're like, what do you mean I don't understand? Like, it's just big, complicated conversation that I don't think should be as complicated as it is. So hopefully, and I see that shifting. I see people trying to understand more now, which is really good. I'm hoping it continues to shift, but that's my gripe. Okay, thanks.
Absolutely. There's an expectation that, I guess for any ethnicity is the same, that you look or sound or have the accents of the West's perception of that place. And it's usually a very stereotyped, like caricatured idea of those people and that culture. And absolutely, as what you said as well about like being pigeonholed or pigeonholed. And I think that as conversations grow, we are seeing a shift of, yes, we're going to hire PGM actors, but it's like, oh, you're here for our PGM roles. So that's also definitely a conversation.
I'm a rebel, and both Ryans know that. Like I didn't cast, but director ends up choosing who's going to be there. And it was super white movie, like 100% white. It was the most colorful voice actors like ever. Cause I'm like, you know what? That's what I mean with like, when we're in power, when we're in the power seat, we're able to do that and like break those things. You know what I mean? Like, so I was like, well, for many, many years, the opposite was true. So yes, I am absolutely gonna go in my community and other, PGM communities. It wasn't, exclusively SWANA, but yeah, absolutely. This movie is going to be incredibly colorful and it's amazing. And it was so good. It was #1 on Netflix for like, I don't even know how long anymore. Like it was, and I was like, see what happens, people. So I hope that can inspire people to, other directors, other casting directors. It was called Furiotsa on Netflix. It's a Polish film, so it's really, really white. but yeah, no. So there was, again, I'm always trying to break the mold and be like, all right, be the change you want to see, right? As cheesy as that sounds, it's really, what I'm trying to do, because, I have quote power, as much power as they let me have, but you know what I mean? So anytime that I'm given that opportunity, I'm like, all right, this is the chance to open up doors for people that, usually will only get called in for Middle Eastern roles, I'm sorry, SWANA roles, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think the more of us there are on this side of the table, the more of you and us there's going to be.
I will say in the dubbing world, one thing I've noticed is, particularly in shows that come out of France, for example, there's so much more representation.
I know.
Than American shows.
Yeah.
Now, granted, a Polish show is going to be, it's just the demographics of Poland are what they are. But like a show, shows that come out of France in particular, there's so many. I mean, it's just beautiful visual. And I have to say, I got to call out an American show that I think is done now. Unfortunately, The Expanse was so beautifully cast, just visually, as far as the representation of actors on the show. So there are shows that really do it very well. But I do think, America lags behind a little. This regard. Hollywood is a little bit behind. Just one quick story. I remember I was 24 and I saw a breakdown. I knew the casting director. I saw a breakdown for mid-20s, quirky Lebanese male, grew up in Texas, went to Harvard. I'm like, oh my God, this is me. I wrote the casting director. I'm like, "You who shall not be named. This is me." And he writes me back. He's like, "Sorry, we're going ethnic for this role." And I'm like, "What does that mean?" And they ended up casting an Indian dude. And then there was shortly thereafter, there was another, not as specific, but another sort of like, comedy, Middle Eastern male, mid-20s. I reached out to him. He's like, "Sorry, you're too ethnic for this role." So there is that weird thing of like, my skin is kind of whitish, but my nose is super Arab, and so it's kind of like, it's a weird sort of white, not white skin tone thing, but forgetting that there are other features also that sort of define you as an ethnicity that aren't just skin tone color. So it was that was like mid-20s. I'm like, oh, this is the road we're gonna have to traverse as we progress.
Yeah, too ethnic, not ethnic enough.
Yep.
Oh, story of my life.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, over the past few years, as conversations have grown, what changes you guys have seen in the auditions that you're being sent? If you've seen any like, oh, like I'm starting to see this appear or this wording change. And Monia, I'm really curious from the director's perspective, from the behind the scenes of voiceover, if you've seen any changes in how productions are approaching things.
Okay. So that was a long sigh. There is change. There is positive change, and I always want to highlight that. There is also, I don't know how much of this I can really talk about, so I'm going to keep it really vague. But we were assigned this animated show, and which was going to be amazing, and we were going to cast it. Me and Claire Doden, who I work for sometimes. And it was like, great, we have an actual SWANA, casting director that is going to be there. So I reached out to like every, SWANA actor in the world, because it was a Middle Eastern, sorry, I keep saying SWANA. Sorry, it's going to take me a little bit. Sorry, but I want to be appropriate. So it was going to be a SWANA show, and it was going to be amazing. It was this huge thing. And I'm like, it's awesome. And the director was this white dude, and he sent his top choices, which were none of the people that we chose. They were all white. And I was like, oh. And then we lost the show. So I don't know what happened to it, because that happens too. And I want to like really talk about this for a second from a casting and directing, point of view. Sometimes you're going to send an audition, you were fantastic, you were gonna get the job, and we lose the project on our end. I lose the project on my end. It happens to all of us. So like, if sometimes like, oh, what did I do wrong? Is it me? Like, why am I not booking? Like, that has happened. It happens to all of us on the side of the table. So please know that. And it breaks our hearts, because like, oh no, I hope it, and then we see who, but oh God, but that's a different conversation. So that was 2 years ago, maybe. I mean, I know I had Rochelle audition, I had Ryan audition, like, and you guys were all going to get it, like, not to be like, oh shit. But yeah, so that happened at the time. Wasn't an isolated incident, hopefully, but I don't know. Again, like, the only thing I do have control over on my side is what I do, right? How I direct, who I approve from casting, who I say, hey, I want to bring this actor in, and again, like, and I say this until I'm blue in the face, but I definitely try to include people from our actors from our community, for sure, and there needs to be more of me. There really needs to be. So come on, guys, let's get into casting, directing, like, seriously, but like that's what needs to happen. That's what needs to happen, because you do stick up, stick up for your people, or again, for people of color, right? Again, it's not just limited to this community, but that's why, white people were on TV forever and still are in some capacity, because the writers and all of that, it's you take your community with you, right? So we need for it to go from this to this, right? To be like, all right, we're taking all of you and bringing you up here. I go up, you go up, we go up together. You know what I mean? So I know there are still, like, I don't even know of another, I know you cast Rogin, but I'm trying to think if I know of another SWANA director. Do I? If I do, please, like, let me know, because I can't think, but I know that we're still a minority, and yet we're a majority in the world. When you think about that, right? It's like we're a minority, but there are a lot of us. It's not like there are 50,000, SWANA people in the world. There millions and millions and millions of people. So we need for that, like, minority mentality to become the global majority. There's a PGM, PGM list, but it's true. It's the global majority. So we need there's a mentality shift that needs to happen. And I encourage, my colleagues, and I refer people all the time, which, again, you guys know, and I haven't been able to hire you, Christina, yet, but I promise I will. I promise I will. It's because I haven't done, you have I love your voice, but it's very, like, young, and I haven't been doing a lot of young stuff, but trust me, like, you're always on my radar.
I'm a nugget. I know. Thank you.
It's amazing. Like, for the right project, like, but I'm always referring, even if I'm not directing something, because, like, we talk, like, this is something that people need to know and need to understand too, like, actors. Again, I'm an actor too, so, but from directing and casting, we talk to each other, so, and there's a trust, like I was talking about Natalie, there's also Mimi Maynard, who's also one of my, like, favorite people. And yeah, Ryan, you know her too. Yeah, of course. And they're like, hey, do you know? And I'm like, yes. And for whatever, if it's a white character, whatever, I'm like, bring Ryan Shrime, bring Ryan Colt Levy, bring, Christina. So we're always referring people to each other, which goes back to be a good person, be professional, be kind, and have a good time. And I promise you, like, I will finish a session and I'll email. I'll be like, okay, you need to hire this person. You need to, and if there are people from global majority, it's a million times better for, it makes my heart happy, because I'm like, yes, we're getting, representation. And then I get an email back, oh my gosh, thank you so much for sending him my way. He's amazing. And then they refer, right? There's a lot of that happening. So it's, just it's fun, and it makes me so happy. We're like, oh, I booked another thing. Did that come from you? I'm like, oh yeah, I think so. But again, none of the credit is mine. Like, if you guys do an amazing job, then it's just that I just take that and I'm like, all right, you need this person, because they're gonna make you look really, really good. So go and do that. So I don't know if that answers the question. I kind of went on a completely different as I do.
Well, even as actors, though, to leapfrog off that, I mean, almost every session I have, I've been lucky to work with, like, a lot of different studios here in town and different directors and casting directors. And my favorite thing to do is recommend other actors to them, because once I'm working with these people, I know they trust me to be professional and that I'm not going to send them someone who doesn't know what they're doing. And I will often, just prioritize people I know that are incredibly talented, that aren't getting opportunities that should be. And it's like, I'm just that guy. So I'm sure there's plenty of directors and casting directors who are like, yeah, Ryan sent me another email with 4 other people and, all this stuff. And I just love sharing it. And I get, I love seeing other people who are super talented win. And I think all of us do. I think this community is incredibly just supportive in the way that, like, we know there's so much work and there's so much talent and there's so much to be shared. And in the same way that when you watch film, a movie would be really boring if you watch 5 movies in a row and it's like the same 10 actors in everything. It just dilutes your experience of being told a story. And the same thing goes with voiceover in any capacity. Like there's so many opportunities for cast to be diverse, to have really unique perspectives and flavors, and have actors with completely different ways that they're going to read or take on a role play off each other, and it just makes it all the more exciting. So we love sharing talent with each other in every way.
Yeah, I got two little bits. One is I have noticed the conversations in the room change, from directors and casting, of an openness to hearing from the performer what might be culturally not accurate or insensitive or not where it needs to be. I definitely have seen more of that and heard more of that in the room. There are still times I have to go into the room and say, you know, this is offensive. And I have gotten pushback sometimes, but there is more of that conversation happening. And also just as a sort of, when we were doing the Arab American Comedy Festival in New York, and we brought it out to Los Angeles in 2006. I took it upon myself to get everybody's headshots and build an email list of 1,000 industry people here in LA. And I emailed every single one of them. And I said, these are a bunch of Arabs that are coming out to Los Angeles that you need to meet. The number of emails I got back was shocking to me, because, you know, in one of these casting, the first casting director that met with me was Mary Vernew, who I don't know if you know who she is. She's massive. And I asked her, I was like, why did you meet with me? And she said, because it's my job. And this was a huge eye-opening moment for me, because she's like, you don't exist here. This community doesn't exist. Like, I know they're out there, but there's not a community. And I am really happy to say and see the community, the Southwest Asian community that has sort of come together over the years. And, you know, you say a lot of us, especially either in the voiceover world or in the on-camera world, we all know each other, you know? I mean, and I go to an audition and I see 20 people that I know, and that's remarkable to me, because as much as I want to beat all of them out for the role, I'm really happy if one of them gets it, you know? And I think that's huge. And I think that is, while we might not be seeing enough advancement on the screen, I think we're seeing a lot more of the structure being built beneath. And I think that is going to start coming through more and more, because it has no choice but to.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry, Christina, before you continue,
Yeah.
or you had mentioned earlier that back in the day, you would only get so little, if ever, any SWANA auditions. I'm curious if you're seeing any changes in that, if you're getting more, if you're getting better ones, or still more, but still the same problematic ones. How's that looking?
I think that it's slowly getting better. I think that I have definitely seen more SWANA auditions. I think that there's still a percentage that aren't like great, but there is a higher percentage of ones that really, you can tell they're really trying. I'm in a few things that are not out, and I'm not going to get fired, but like that, do you have SWANA rep, which is pretty cool. And I never thought I would be in that position to get to be that rep before, which has been really, really cool. I worked on a project very recently where the director asked my opinion on things to make sure that it was appropriate, to make sure that it was not the conversation we had a little bit a while back about how you justify why someone's there. They wanted to avoid that, which was probably the happiest moment I've ever been in a session. And they were like, I just want to make sure you feel that this character just exists and gets to play in this world, and you don't feel like we're trying to justify their existence. And it was the best conversation I ever had in my life, I think. And I'm truly hoping there will be more of that. And it was fun. It really was a character that just existed. And I had never got to not have, I don't know, either like a tragic backstory or like, you know what I mean? Where they're like, the parents disapprove and yeah, they're really strict and it's just not, they're trying to escape their oppressive culture. This just wasn't that for once, which was really nice. I've seen more editions start to just state the character is SWANA, sorry, hello, Boston accent, how are you? It comes out sometimes. And that was like it wasn't like is SWANA, and also their personality comes because they're nervous about their parents' disapproval was one I used to see a lot in like kid stuff. This is slowly started to be better. So I have a lot of hope. I do think that I don't see a ton of SWANA stuff still. Honestly, I think that's the biggest issue for me, is that it's like the characters don't exist as much as I think they should yet. So there's such a small amount of parts. And as we were saying, there are so many of us, yet they will often not cast somebody who's SWANA anyway. So like the math doesn't add up all the time, but I definitely think it's getting better. And I'm excited to see how next year is. I think every year it's going to get a little bit better as we get a little bit louder. That's my, I don't know why I raised my eyebrow there. That was scary. Sorry. But yeah, that's my opinion.
I think my big frustration right now with like this kind of stuckness of it all that you're talking about is I think the video game world right now is kind of in a really big problematic place with this, where still for the most part it's either you're an NPC and you've got to do the accents to some vague degree because they don't even want specificities, or you are, you know, hopefully lucky to read for, you know, the other characters who are very much either white or skewing or whatever, or, you know, but a lot of the times in, you know, especially in like AAA games and stuff, like we're not even considered, or worst case scenario, we're on the opposite end of the Call of Duty, you know, so a lot of the time it's like we're a mission where, you know, they have to like bomb us and stuff. So I'm really looking forward to, you know, the day when like the big AAA game is not Prince of Persia and can be something like, you know, something closer to The Last of Us that just happens to have, you know, that representation that is so needed. That to me, like, I love video games so deeply. I love playing them. I love the stories. I love where it's going cinematically in the way that it is challenging the medium of storytelling and challenging film. It is an extraordinary medium for storytelling, but I think it's one of the most severely underrepresented places for us. And I would love to see that change, because it feels like it's time.
Also, just to speak to that, Ryan, a little, there's a couple things I want to be careful with what I say here. Part of the thing is, a lot of times, because of all the NDA and the secrecy, you'll audition for things and you don't know what you're auditioning for. And by the time you book the role, you realize it's something that maybe you wouldn't have necessarily wanted to represent. And so I'm just going to leave that as that. So that is a thing.
I've definitely almost lost a job because I've been in the booth and they presented me with something and I was not down for it. And so I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. The other thing is, and to speak to video games in particular also, because I'm a big gamer. I grew up on video games. I love video games. Part of the thing is also a lot of these fantasy worlds that we see in games and animation. To have a fantasy lead, a Luke Skywalker type character look like us is still political. it's a statement. And, you know, or heaven forbid you have a lead in The Last of Us who's a hijabi. You know, heaven forbid, because then it has to become a thing, as opposed to, you know, just this is the character. And so, you know, most of these characters in fantasy worlds also still in particular have to be white or black or Latino, you know, the things that are palatable to Americans. It's still a little weird to have an East Asian leader, a Southeast Asian or Southwest Asian, you know, I mean, it's still, they would be making a statement by doing that. And I think a lot of designers, maybe even if they do think of it, to give them the benefit of the doubt, they don't want to open Pandora's box.
You know what I'm noticing from video games, because I do those too. There's, I mean, again, I think it's getting better. I really do. And the auditions that I do get are like awesome. And you know, she is SWANA, and she's not bad, right? She's, you know, the leader of the thing, and it's awesome. But like, I'm seeing like certain directors being assigned that more than others, you know. So there's and I don't know how that works. I don't direct video games. But for example, like Tom Keegan. I don't know.
Sorry, can you start directing video games, Monia, please?
Yes, I can. I'm available for hire.
Thank you.
No, but Tom Keegan, who I worked with on Wolfenstein Youngblood, he gets a lot of those projects, and he's really good about representation. And I'm like, oh, is there a thing where, you know, some directors are not getting known for, you know, handling, and it's major games, like he does really big things. So that's something that just came up in my head while we were talking. But we need more Toms then. You know, like we need more of that, because he's the sweetest. I love him so much. But if there are more of him, I mean, again, the games are being created, right? But then is he the one that goes in and says, hey, by the way, I think this character should be SWANA, and we're never going to talk about the fact that she's SWANA. You know, like she's just not gonna be white. I'm seeing a lot on camera of like the shift that I have seen in the last year or two. And it's funny because it's like, you know, female, mid-20s, indigenous, Latina, Middle Eastern, North African, Southwest, Indian, whatever, basically not white, except they can't write that. So they write everything else. But that's a sign too that it doesn't matter, right? You can be SWANA and playing this character, and it's not going to be referenced in the script. So I'm seeing a lot of that. The last thing I booked, which I'm really excited about, I shot yesterday, I'm shooting Monday too, was that. It was whatever. We just don't want her to be white. And, you know, and I fit the bill, and I was like, amazing. So I think there is that was very strange. I'm going to add that to my reel. But yeah, that is changing, and so it's being more inclusive, and it's not like, oh, she's definitely SWANA because, you know, her brother is a terrorist. Because I have had those sites too, where it's like, my brother's not a terrorist. Yes, he is. He just blew up 12 people. Why? Like, why? There was no reason for that, you know. So I do. Again, I'm excited for the shift that's happening day by day, right? We can only take it one step at a time. So, but
I will just add one last thing. And again, this speaks to needing representation on the writing side, in particular. I mean, it's sort of hard not to get political, but you know, you take a look at what's going on in Iran right now, as far as the women burning their hijab, and people in the West thinking, yes, they're finally fighting against oppressive Islam. And that's not what it is. They're fighting against an oppressive government and using that as a symbol. And so for someone who is not super well versed, and I would even say myself, we as creators have those problems. So, you know, we as SWANA creators have those problems. So like, we can't expect John from Ohio to really understand the nuances of these characters in this culture, and understand that there is a difference in burning a hijab to fight the government versus burning it to fight Islam. Also barring the fact that there is a conflation of Southwest Asia and Islam. Like, not all Arab stories are Muslim stories, not all Persian stories are Muslim stories. There are also, I was raised Catholic.
Of course, Christian names, yeah.
And so like that's also a thing that like there's nuance that as much as they might be trying, they're just not gonna get, because they're not steeped in this culture, which is why we have to do the work beyond just being performers. We have to create, we have to put ourselves in positions of power to hire creators who understand the nuances and the intricacies of situations that well-intentioned Americans might not understand.
Yeah. It was complicated, I think.
Yes. Top emojis for that, definitely. I guess I had other questions, but I feel like you segued so well into this question that I had is this whole idea of the audiences watching. How can we expect them to, differentiate the messages that are kind of being fed? What are some ways that you guys can think of that audiences can consume content with SWANA depictions critically and like maybe recognize potentially problematic portrayals, like tips and advice for consuming media with a critical eye to be able to tell apart those narratives?
I call this the 300-pound Samoan problem. One of my pet peeves in reading scripts, when I first realized that representation was a thing, is anytime I read the word Samoan, it was always preceded by 300 pounds. Because there was this trope in American media that Samoans were these big 300-pound Samoans. And, then I became aware of the sassy black woman, and it's so, I think part of what we can do as consumers of media is start looking out for these tropes that we see all, and with SWANA characters in particular, the big one is the terrorist, obviously, the deli owner, the cab driver, the terrorist, but it's also these smaller things that we've talked about. Are these characters, and this goes for everyone, are these characters being exoticized? Are they being othered? Or are they being humanized? And I think that is, for any form of representation, that is extremely important. The exoticization of East Asian characters as the geishas, or the Japanese businessman, like these stereotypes that you think of when you automatically, because all of us do it. We all have these stereotypes in our heads, whether we're trying to or not. So if we've been fed something by the media for so long, I think it's incumbent upon us to start looking at the media that we consume and say, is this, to co-opt a term, is this woke or not? And by woke meaning, is this character a black lesbian just because she exists? And I think if you start seeing the Twitter world erupt over a show, it means it's probably doing something right. And I think that is important for us to just start consuming and recognizing our tropes that we've become accustomed to, and start demanding we see more human and not exotic, mysterious, dangerous. I speak about like Southeast Asians a lot. Kumail Nanjiani got a lot of grief for bulking up and masculinizing himself for his Marvel role. And it really bothered me a lot, because Southeast Asian men are always portrayed as not masculine or dangerous. They're dorky tech guys, or they're the rapey Indian dude, you know, creepy, leery, and you know, I mean, like, and to have a South Asian lead male who was handsome and fit, you know, we don't see that a lot. And so we need to start demanding that, you know, to stop otherizing these PGM communities.
Yeah, 100% agree. And as you were talking, I just thought about this as a consumer, and this is not fiction that they also need to be careful with, but the news, right? Let's chat about that for a second. And as an audience, I think, you know, Americans, and, you know, not just Americans, but Americans a lot. You know, there's a terrorist attack, or some guy, it's a mass shooting, or whatnot. If he's brown, if he's, you know, from the SWANA community, it's a terrorist for sure. It's a terrorist attack. If the guy is white, it's, oh, mental health, you know, he's not doing so well. Poor white boy from Kentucky, you know. So as an audience, I think, and the media, so the media needs to change, right? The media, because because that's what creates then this image, right? Because there's what's happening. And yes, of course, there are bad people in every single culture, in every single, you know, community. Absolutely. Like, I'm not saying there aren't, but the magnifying glass that is put on, you know, SWANA, bad people, is making it blow out of proportion, right? And then the audience, oh my gosh, like, we need to be scared of that. And then, you know, writers are like, oh, we need to take that and make it even bigger. And then the audience is like, oh, so then there's a reaction with people, like, you see it, right? Like, I mean, you know, again, I don't look Arab, whatever that means, you know, but I see it with, like, you know, a hijabi, like beautiful hijabi, like yourself, Rogin, or, you know, friends of mine, like, then people are a bit, right after there's an act of, you know, whatever, it's not an act of terrorism, a crazy person doing crazy things, right? Then you see people going, oh, I'm going to sit over here, right? Or I'm going to get off the train, because, you know, we don't know if this person is that, but they won't do that if it's a white dude, even though most attacks are actually done by white dudes. So the media needs to stop that. It starts with them. It starts with them, you know? So, and I wish audiences could take that with a grain of salt and be like, wow, why are we still talking about this guy that killed 3 people, you know, a month ago, because his name is Mohammed? Like, why? But Jake, who killed 600 people with his AK-47, you know, oh, 3 days later, we moved on, you know, oh, it's just another day in America. You know what I mean? So I think that needs to start changing, and we need to create more content that has nothing to do with any of that, you know, so it needs to go hand in hand.
Yes, for sure. I think that's why these types of conversations are so important right now, is because when these media images, like news outlets, portray a certain group in that way, and then entertainment media is also showing them in negative, incorrect ways, it's very, very dangerous for the public opinion and how they perceive that group and how they treat them, and then how they support public policy or foreign policy against that group. So absolutely, that's such a good point. It's so important to also look at the real life media beyond entertainment depictions as well. It's very much connected, even though we don't quite realize it. But yeah, I'm just gonna throw in there for the audiences a suggestion of the RIS test, which was actually a test made for Muslim portrayals. But as Ryan, you mentioned, unfortunately, there is this misconception idea that Muslims and SWANA are synonymous. So our depictions tend to be very overlapping, but it asks 5 questions. 1 is the character being depicted talking about the victim of or the perpetrator of terrorism. 2, are they presented as irrationally angry? 3, are they presented as superstitious, culturally backwards, or anti-modern? 4, presented as a threat to the Western way of life, or 5, if the character is male, is he presented as misogynistic, or a female, is she presented as oppressed by her male counterpart? And if they fail any of these, if they apply any of these, they fail the test. So I think that's it's a good thing to keep in mind when watching things. So we're reaching the last 20 minutes. So I want to get through one of our audience questions here before we go into a little speed round agree disagree game. So someone here asked, hi y'all, I was wondering how you deal with or feel about Orientalism in the industry. Do you actively try to combat the stereotypes in your work, and how, or not so much? And lots of love and support from a North African gal in the Netherlands. And Ryan, you had kind of mentioned that as there are conversations growing in the rooms. There are, feedback being given by actors or different people. And you had mentioned that you have experience with getting pushback about that. I'm curious about what the situation was, how you voiced it, what the response was.
I don't audition for terrorist roles. That is the thing that I don't do, if I know that they are terrorist roles. I have in my life broken that for a couple of reasons. One, I don't want to ever make a blanket statement, but I feel like this is a pretty blanket statement. There was a project though that I knew people were working on it, and they called me in, and I was like, this is an opportunity to go in and have a conversation. So I went in and I read the sides. I hadn't read the script because I didn't have it. And then they were like, you know what, you're more right for this role. They give me this role, and it is a terrorist dude in a cave who's kidnapped a blonde woman and is using the Quran as justification to rape her. And I was like, are we open to having this conversation? And there was a yes to that, but right now let's just see the scene. So I was like, you know what, let me just try and do the scene. And as Ryan was talking about, humanizing the character as much as I could. And the response I got from the director was, can you make it a little more terroristy? And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, on a level from like white dude to Osama bin Laden, what are you talking about? And he's like, an 11. And so I did the same thing that I did before, because I was like, you know what, let me just get through this. Unfortunately, I did not stop and have that conversation there. And I should have. That was an opportunity to have that conversation. I did have the conversation afterwards. And I told my reps and I told the casting directors, I said, this is not okay. This is 2001-24 stuff. Like, this is not the world that we're in anymore. And it was a massive disappointment for me, as just to answer the question that was asked. That's one of the ways in which I fight Orientalism, is I just don't go out for them. I tell my reps, don't send me them. I don't want to see them. I don't even want to know they exist. I don't know that that's the healthiest way. I think going into these rooms and putting ourselves, unfortunately, for misrepresented people, the onus falls on the misrepresented to have the conversations with the people in power. So unfortunately, it is incumbent upon us to have these hard conversations, because no one else is going to do it if we don't. So I do think going into the room, having these conversations, and particularly, again, I keep coming back to this, I don't care if you're not a writer. Write. Yeah. You have to create. And if you're not a writer, pair up with writers. Like, it is, and the video game world is a really interesting thing, because like becoming a writer for a video game is a weird space. But we have to find our way into these conversations at the get-go before they get written. And as consumers, to just back up that one little thing, support Momo's America, support Rami, support Mo, support Sam Esmail, like I said, and support, like, look up who these SWANA creators are and support their shows, watch them, and even if you don't like them, just turn them on in the background and go do something else, like get the viewership up so that like we can start seeing more of them and start getting more of those creators' power.
I think collaborating, like, Jalen, Ryan, which is funny because, but we came up with this like hashtag brown people unite, right? Which I think is really indicative of like what we're trying to do. And, we were talking like, let's create, let's write something, let's, because then again, then we're in the power seat, I haven't, gosh, I do write my own content. I just have been so busy that I haven't in a couple of years. But the last short film that I wrote and produced and starred in, I was, a Muslim girl living in America, and plot twist, but there's this other girl who's like white and, like from a very nice family, like the, typical, like, white family. And then I completely reversed the usual roles of, her family, the Muslims families, like bad people, Turns out that it's actually the white family that, the guy ends up shooting a bunch of people, and how it was portrayed in the media as like, oh, this, Muslim family that we don't know too much about, but, poor white person, and, mental health should have been taken care of. So I think, again, like this was done with very little, but small budget and all of that. But the more we do that, and the bigger the budgets are going to become, and, community helps us get there. So we need to step up. We absolutely do, and need to create, and need to write, and need to direct, and need to produce, and we need to do that because they do that, right? The other communities do that. So we need to get on that. It's just, again, it's new, right? Like it's new, and again, like on a cultural level, it took a little bit for us to get here, right? Like we had to fight, like families and stigmas and all of that. Maybe a little bit more than other cultures may have to, just because it's not something that is like the norm, right? In the SWANA community, like an artist, like my dad's like, that's not even a thing, but no, it is. So it's in its infancy, I think. But again, like if we, hashtag brown people unite, we're unstoppable. Again, there are so many of us. We just need to, have this goal of being more represented, of having better stories, of, and we can do it. Again, Rami is doing it, Miss Marvel is doing it, and Mo's doing it, and Momo's America, and all of that. So it's still a small number again, but it's getting progressively larger.
Sorry, one real quick thing as a performer, and this is something that Ryan mentioned earlier. One little thing, this is just one tiny thing as a performer. Question, is your accent necessary? Is it, a lot of times, because this is a SWANA character, they have to have this strange Middle Eastern accent. So,
what do you mean?
Like,
what are you talking about?
Yeah. Like, just question, is that necessary? Is it just because they're trying to color this character? Or is it actually because it's, important? So like little things like that, as a performer, we have power over these conversations that we can say, or even like little words here and there that you find as a SWANA performer that you're like, that makes me feel bad, say something. Because more often than not, they're open to it. They just don't know.
So true. Great. We're nearing our last 10 minutes, so we're going to go through this speed round. I would have loved to be able to elaborate on each of these, but for now, I think it'll be interesting just to get your guys's, perspectives, agreeing, disagreeing on it. So how it's going to work is I'm going to say a statement and you guys are going to thumbs up or thumbs down if you agree or disagree with the statement. Pretty straightforward. Okay. So for the first one, I feel there are enough resources and opportunities to support me as a SWANA voice actor. Interesting. I mean, low-key why we're all here having this panel, but yes. Okay, so when I was starting out in the VO film industry, I worried that it would be hard for me to break in because of my SWANA identity. Oh, it's split. I'm so interested to hear, Christina, your thoughts on this, how you felt when you were starting out.
So when I was starting out, again, my aunt had experience in stunts, and almost all her stunts for a very long time were like, if she ever had a non-stunt role, she was a terrorist or an Arabic woman yelling in Arabic. She told me a story how she auditioned for something and she just yelled Lebanese foods out, not even spoke Arabic. And they were like, that's the best audition we've seen all day. And she literally was like, oh, Mr. Bully. And they were like, yes, that's perfect. Like, and that kind of didn't give me like the best hope for my career, I think. I know she thought it was hilarious. She didn't think she was gonna book, but she did. And that's, I think, where it made me a little nervous, because it felt like people didn't know a lot about like about our like background though. That was like a big sign to me. And I was like, okay, well, am I gonna fit in? Am I even gonna be othered? Because they don't know what to even do with me, is what it felt like. And then again, I got told to dye my hair blonde and get a nose job, so I didn't have like the best experience.
Oh man, yeah.
So
Fair enough.
yeah.
Okay, next statement. This is a topic of divide in the voiceover community, especially with PGM and as these conversations grow. But it's okay for any SWANA identifying actor to audition for any SWANA roles, as long as they're SWANA, regardless of whether it's their exact ethnicity. Interesting. Very interesting.
I can jump in quick and say why I say yes, because I really just think it's a matter of like, right now we are a small circle of people that are allowed to even get in there, and I just want to see us start the conversation.
I'm all for, I'm 100%. My only question was like, if there's something that's like super Tunisian or Moroccan,
Right, obviously that's a
then
different
I would be
matter.
like, this isn't, but for especially language wise and accent wise, I think that's the only, for the most part, if it's just a dude who happens to be Persian or something, I mean, I wouldn't feel bad voicing that. But if it's like, has to speak Farsi or,
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. It's like a big part of the character.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And then the last statement, when approached by a project with problematic elements, I would prefer to simply decline the project than fight the production on the issue. Interesting. This one does open up the question of when it's best to walk away, when it's not worth your energy to fight, when it's not beneficial or potentially more harmful to your career to have that conversation, or when it might be better for the collective whole to have those difficult conversations. Definitely an interesting one to think about. All right, so okay, I have so many questions for you guys. I just want to pick your brains and hear about all of your experiences, but with such a limited time. I would love to hear what's one thing that has helped you get to where you are in your career, and what advice you would have for others who might want to set off in a similar direction.
I think no matter what, and this will probably be a universal kind of thing, is regardless of anything, you have to believe that you have something to say and offer, to the point of almost being stubborn, where, you know, because the entertainment industry, no matter what, as welcoming as it can be really hard to initially get that door to open up, or that window to open up, or whatever it is. And I think that you have to start with a deep belief in yourself and what you are trying to achieve as a performer, and what your goals are on a larger scale. And I think that that fuel kind of is the foundation for everything that comes afterwards, and how you navigate, whether it's making choices on auditioning or working within parts, and dealing with studios and being casted, you know, accordingly. All of that comes from your own self-validation and understanding that you belong and can do the thing, and can help ultimately push for progress.
Yeah. Again, I should make a t-shirt with "Be Good People." Just because I swear to God, like, it's people talk in this industry. Everybody knows everybody. And if you're a good person, if you're, again, professional, if you're on time, if you're fun to work with, you're gonna work again. And I know sometimes it's hard to get like that first initial booking, but that first booking, the way you treat that will decide what kind of career you're going to have, you know. So, you know, and think that nothing is ever above, you know, that you're not above anything, right? Like, yeah, and then like Ryan was saying, like, believe in yourself, and make sure that this is your dream, right? Because yes, there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs, and the downs are going to be hard, right? But if this is what you know you were born to do, and we know when we're born to do this, right? Like it's in our soul, and it doesn't matter family, culture, whatever it is. Like, we know that this is what we're meant to be, and we know that, I'm going to start crying, but like, we know that this is where we belong. Then we're unstoppable, and don't let the no's stop you. You know, like, and I can say what it is, but like, I booked like an on-camera thing, and I was on set with this huge movie star. I was like, holy shit, like, it's hard sometimes, it really is, you know, but I didn't give up because I was like, I gotta keep going. And, you know, I've stayed decent with everybody and friendly with everybody, and, you know, and keep doing the work and keep being consistent, and have a therapist. I swear to God, we all need a therapist, you know, but have a really good therapist so you can talk about those really hard moments, and keep going, and allow yourself to feel like, sorry, I don't know if I'm gonna say shit, but I did. Allow yourself to feel like, if you need to, allow it. You know, we live in a town like LA, like, I don't know, everybody's from everywhere, but like, where it's like, oh, we don't talk about that. You know, we're all good all the time, and it's all awesome. Hashtag so grateful all the time. No, that's not real. That's not real. Allow yourself to feel a disappointment. It's okay. Go through the emotions, and you'll come out of it. You will. So just keep pushing, keep going, keep being a good person. Know that this is your dream, and you're going to achieve it. The only person standing between you and your dream is you. So just, oh gosh, I feel so passionate about this, clearly. So yeah. So I hope I can inspire you, and that we can all inspire you today of what's possible. And there's so much for us to do. There's so much more for us to do. And there is room for everybody. There is room for everybody, guys. It's not a competition. There is room for all of us. And I'm so excited. Anyway.
Yeah, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not if I win, you lose, or if you win, I lose. I think to keep it short, I have millions of things I could say. To keep it short, community. Also, don't do everything right. I mean, I've spent my career doing everything right, and it's only when I've done things fun that I've made any advances. I mean, just, you have to, because this is a horribly difficult career, can be at times. So just, I mean, you have to have a community that supports you, not just in the business, just in your life. And just like, always ask yourself, is this what I want to do? Not just saying, do I want to be an actor, but it's this specific thing, this project, do I want to do this? If not, what do I want to do? What do I want to create? What are, like, if I just want to be an actor or voice actor, then what are the roles I want to voice, and find those things. Don't do what you are supposed to be doing. Because you're going to spend, I mean, this has been 25 years now for me in this business. You're going to spend a long time doing things that you feel like you should. And life's too short.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody said everything so beautifully. I just, the community has helped me so much. I had so many kind SWANA voice actors lift me up when I first started and make me believe that there was also room for me. And coming from my experiences on camera, being a teenager on camera was very, very competitive, very not super pleasant all the time. I think that it might be a little bit less intense and scary when you're not like 14, like arguing with somebody's mom. But it shocked me how supportive and lovely people were. I would not be where I am without people referring me, believing in me, advocating for me to, hey, yeah, Christina can record from home. She's disabled. She can't get there, but trust me, she can do it. And that has meant everything to me. I'm going to cry too. So just, there is room for everyone too. You were so right. Like, we can all do this. It is so important to not feel like, okay, well, I already can name 6 SWANA actors, so there's no room for me. Like, no, there should be hundreds of names that you can pull out. Thousands, I don't care. There's a seat at the table for you. So don't give up. And I agree, have a therapist. That's probably a really good idea. This career is very emotional. Thank you.
That's really the best advice.
Yes.
Get a good therapist.
Get a good therapist.
Yeah, you're gonna need them.
Amazing. Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time. So just to summarize a bit of what we had touched on that I think was really great and important, you guys had talked about some of the ways indirectly in your conversations, you had talked about some changes that we need to make, and how things can get better. And that can be by consuming our media with a critical eye, and listening to SWANA voices when they say, hey, this is not okay. Supporting SWANA folks in the industry, cheering them on and being like, yes, hire them. And like, this is great. This is what we need, uplifting their voices, and bringing SWANA folks into the behind the scenes, into writer rooms, into the start of the process of productions, so that when that actor walks into the room, they don't have to be like, after everything is done and ready and finished, for them to be like, oh, wait, this is not right. And then you guys talked a bit about some good examples you saw of SWANA representation that you guys really loved. Mrs. Marvel, Mo, Rami, I think you mentioned Momo's America. So that's great. It's always good to know what good examples are and what we can cheer on and what we can say, yes, hopefully this can be the normalized, consistent thing that we see of our people. And then your last comments were just very nice. Be yourself and have fun. Don't always try to do the right thing. And yeah, that was great. Thank you so much, you guys. We are at the end of the panel, but thank you so much to both Ryans and Christina, Monia, for spending your Saturday here with us to share your wisdom and your personal experiences in this. And I'm so excited to continue watching you guys kill it in the industry and just your amazingness. And thank you to everyone that joined us, whether live or in the future, which is hopefully a better future, on YouTube of the playback recording. And thank you to the questions that came in. And, you know, we didn't get to touch on a lot of these, a lot of the questions that I really wanted to talk to you guys about, but this conversation is far from over. This is just the start of the conversation and the shifted changes. And as we continue to learn, as we discover things, as the industry changes, so will our conversation and the things that we will focus on. So I look forward to the next time we all get together, and we can talk about, since this panel, what changes we've seen.
And thank you, Rogin, for amazing
Rogin for president. Woo!
Yeah, truly amazing.
A big jump, moderator to president. All right, yeah.
I believe in you. Seriously.
You got
support
this.
it. I support it.
Yes.
But yes, thank you so much again, everyone. And
Thank
before
you.
we leave, I know that we need to get a photo, a screenshot photo. But if Edward is still behind the scenes there, I'm going to call you over because I don't know how to do that.
I will just do a print screenshot. So just everyone get ready. So I will count down 3 seconds. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Cheese. Got it.
Jeez.
Great. Have a great day, everyone, or night.
You as well.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Everyone.
Bye,
Thank you
all.
for coming.
Cheers.